Are there things that won't move that direction?
Yes. And if the system is overloaded, okay, it can actually become part of the urine, all right? Or it can make its way to the liver, where maybe the liver can help, okay? There are other things that can happen, but really, if it's a continuous problem, then it's going to be indicative of these kidneys not functioning correctly. Now, drugs and contaminants. When you take a medication, or you take a vitamin, or something like that, okay, you have to take it in a high concentration. For example, let's say that you're given an antibiotic. That antibiotic, 500 milligrams, 3 times a day. So you would be taking 1,500 milligrams of that medication throughout the day. Does your body get all 1,500 milligrams of that? No, you're being given this huge amount because only a small portion of it is going to actually make it into the system to attack the bacteria.
So that's why they give you antibiotics like
Because the majority, you're making expensive urine. What about vitamins?
Sometimes you have to have other things to be able to absorb.
You've got to take something in conjunction with it. Why have so many medications now become transdermal? Directly to the bloodstream. You're getting the effect, and it doesn't have to be filtered as much through the kidneys and the liver. So the dosage can be smaller and stronger because you're not having it go through these systems first, which is kind of cool if you think about it. So the kidneys are going to be a major force for that. And what about the liver? It's going to be also a major force in removing the contaminants. So now, as we move into this nephron loop, the primary job, generate an osmotic gradient. Where? The loop is located in the medulla. Osmotic gradient. Osmosis, based on the movement of water. Water goes from the area of high concentration to low concentration. We are wanting to get the water back to the system. And then materials that will pass with that, some of them get to move, some of them don't. So it's telling me, I'm looking at the osmotic gradient of my medulla. So that tells me in my medulla, if I can build up a whole bunch of particles in this tissue out here, what's my water level? My water level is low. Now, at the point of the nephron loop, I still have 35% water. Is that correct? Even though I have removed 65%, do I need 35% of 100? Somebody do the math for me. 180 liters times 35%. So let me see. Huh? What?
63.
You do that in your head?
Yeah.
How many? 63 liters? Do I still need 63 liters making it to my bladder? No. I don't know about y'all, but I don't think I would like that very much. You wouldn't even leave the bathroom. So, if I can have water low, that tells me that in this nephron loop, my water is still high, and I can now have this concentration gradient, and I can make my water do what? I can now make it move out. Is everybody following me? So, it helps to concentrate our urine. So as that begins to continue to move through this loop, and if we can get water to continue to move out, by the time I get to this side and reach that distal convoluted tubule, the next thing I'm going to empty into is my collecting duct. Is that correct? And then the collecting duct leads into my calyces, right? Which leads into my renal pelvis, which is going to go to my ureter, which is going to go to my urinary bladder, which is going to go to my urethra and out my body. Is everybody following me? So, like I said, we've got thick and thin segments, all right? So in this structure, thick, thin, thick, all right? Proteins in the apical membranes are present. Once again, transport, right? They can bind any other sodium, potassium, chlorine from the fluid that's now moving, push them out of the basal surface. If it pushes them out of the basal surface, I'm building up this concentration outside that tube. Potassium can re-enter by way of the sodium-potassium pump. Sodium chloride stays behind in the tissue of the medulla. This tube, this renal tube, is impermeable to water. It can't follow our solutes. So, fluid gets even more dilute as it moves and moves and moves and moves, coming to the distal convoluted tubule. So we're seeing basically water moving and those, once again, electrolytes. Now, when we get to that distal convoluted tubule, there's still a lot of fluid in the fluid. Okay? Movement at this point in this distal convoluted tubule now gets regulated by hormones. This is where ADH from the endocrine system comes in. So at this point, hormones affect any movement of the water and the salts. What was the purpose of ADH? The antidiuretic hormone? Okay, and to help us regulate it. Okay, so aldosterone, natriuretic peptides, antidiuretics, and the parathyroid hormone can all affect the distal convoluted tubule and therefore affect water loss. The cellular makeup of the distal convoluted tubule, we will have what's termed a principal cell that contains the receptor for the hormone. And then we have intercalated cells which affect the H pluses, affecting the acid-base balance. Not getting a whole lot into that with you. The hormones that are going to influence aldosterone. Aldosterone is known as the salt retaining hormone. Ooh, that can be good, that could be bad. It comes from the adrenal cortex. Remember the adrenal glands on top of the kidneys? Okay. It can also be affected by blood pressure. But because we are at the level of the nephron, renin now gets involved. And it has to go through the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone process, which is going to involve the lungs. Okay? This hormone, it acts on the thick segment of the ascending limb. Basically, reabsorb sodium, secrete potassium. Now, water and chlorine at this point will follow that sodium. That means the body retains the salt. So people sometimes who have high blood pressure, I mean, I can remember I was young, like when my dad got diagnosed with high blood pressure, and all of a sudden the cooking at the house was just no longer as tasteful, okay? Because it was like, you know, oh no, we can't have any salt, because, you know, your dad's high blood pressure, blah, blah. So there was no more salt put in anything, okay? Well, now, you know, medications are different and that sort of thing, but it was due to the high blood pressure, this taking place, the body retaining salt, which is not good, okay, for the high blood pressure. And even to this day, I don't think my mom puts salt in anything when she cooks it. I'm just like, you know, okay, we gotta put some salt and stuff. Now, when this happens, body retains the salt, urine production is reduced, and it's going to have a lot of potassium in it, which might not be good. Because the water gets retained, we affect the blood volume and therefore affect the blood pressure. Now these other ones, at this point, for the natriuretic peptides, the only thing I want you to know at this point, released from the heart itself. So when blood pressure is high, that's basically the only thing I want you to know. ADH, which we talked about in the endocrine system, now look what it acts on. It acts on the collecting duct for the ADH. The parathyroid hormone, which once again, from the endocrine system, that deals with the calcium. And it'll act on the bone in the kidneys. Now the parathyroid hormone in the kidneys acts on the proximal convoluted tubule. On the DCT, the thick segment, it will act, but the major action is in the PCT, dealing with the water. Now, in the collecting duct, after that urine has moved through the loop, through the distal convoluted tubule, by the time we get to the collecting duct, it should be very concentrated at this time. Now, the collecting ducts actually begin in the cortex. So here, because we got the nephrons that are up here, and remember, a collecting duct can have a lot of nephrons attached to it. Do you guys remember that? So, they actually begin in the cortex. They're getting fluid from several different nephrons. But here's the thing. As that collecting duct begins to go through the medulla, it's actually going through the portion that's high in particles. Okay? So it's being affected by that osmotic gradient. So, concentrates urine even more due to that gradient, okay? By the time we get to the end of this collecting duct, our urine is now 4 times more concentrated than when it entered. So it continues to concentrate because of this osmosis, and then being more permeable to water, meaning water gets to move out while going through the collecting duct. So when we get to the collecting duct, where it begins in the cortex, runs through the medulla, that collecting duct is very permeable to the water. Water wants to move out. By the time we get here, from the time it started to the time we get here, it's now 4 times more concentrated. The goal, hopefully, is at this point we have removed 99% of all the stuff that we started with. 99%. Take a break, be back at 9:30.